3232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2. Or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Sunday with Michael Portillo from 11, only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Most people will be familiar with French artists such as Auguste Renoir, Claude Monet and Camille Pissarro, who, with others, made up the Impressionist movement of the late 19th century. But we are probably less familiar with the British contingent of the Impressionists, artists like Frank Bramley, Elizabeth Armstrong Forbes and Walter Langley, amongst many others. David Messam is on a mission to change that. I'm joined by David Messam and by Patrick Duffy, an esteemed archivist. These people we're talking about, are they really Impressionists? I mean, I assume they're British, but are they Impressionists?
I think we had the same query when we wrote a book about the whole thing in '85, actually. And we were the book nearly went out as The Garden of Bright Images, actually, though my author then, Laura Wortley, was quite insistent that it should be called The Garden of Bright Images, but I thought probably we'd put it in the gardening section, actually. So, you know, the question you ask is what is on other people's minds, too, actually. Have we got Impressionism in this country? I think for me, as I used to do quite a lot of shopping, if you like, in America, looking for English pictures out there, and they've got American Impressionism, and I'm quite happy with it, but the English are different.
Were they friends and colleagues? Were they collaborators with the French Impressionists?
Broadly speaking, British Impressionism is, as we term it, is the post-Impressionist movement. So they were certainly inspired by the French Impressionist movement as it was, but they came later. They travelled around Europe and became attuned to en plein air painting, so painting outdoors, and that's what they brought over with them. We call it British realism, but there's a focus. British
realism, I kind of recognise.
Yes.
I mean, that's exactly what that
exactly.
looks like.
The People's Channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Dubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together and what have we got, in my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
GB News will start this hour, 11 o'clock, with that breaking news we've been talking about the last few hours, that there are reports tonight a police station in Sunderland has been set on fire during what Northumberland police have described as another night of serious violence linked to the Southport stabbings. These are the latest pictures from that scene of the blaze, with confirmation now that at least 2 vehicles have been overturned and also set on fire. That was as rioters clashed with officers over the last few minutes. You can also see here one of those overturned cars set ablaze, and police in riot gear also coming under sustained attack tonight as protesters set off fire extinguishers and threw rocks and bottles towards them. Earlier, up to 200 people were heard shouting anti-Islamic chants as mounted police and officers in vans took to the roads to traffic and keep the peace. Well, meanwhile, the Prime Minister has visited Southport for the second time this week to announce a package of support for the victims in the town. During his second visit there, Sir Keir Starmer praised the town's resilience and announced mental health support and events he says will boost local cohesion. In London, meanwhile, Downing Street has joined with landmarks across the northwest, lighting up in pink over the weekend in memory of the young girls that were killed in that Southport knife attack on Monday. 9-year-old Alice da Silva Aguirre, 6-year-old Bebe King and Elise Dott, who was 7, were killed when a knifeman attacked them earlier this week. 8 other children were also injured, along with 2 adults. Well, turning to other news, today a mural of former newsreader Hugh Edwards in his home village of Carmarthenshire has been removed. The artwork has now been painted over, while institutions including Bangor and Cardiff universities are reviewing their ties with the ex-presenter. That's after he admitted to accessing indecent images of children. The Culture Secretary is now calling on the BBC to reclaim the £200,000 salary that Mr Edwards received between his arrest in November and his resignation in April. Prisoners who have been released as part of an exchange between Russia and the West have spoken of their burden that others are still in jail. It was the biggest exchange of prisoners since the Cold War and included dual Russian British citizen Vladimir Kara-Murza. He was detained following opposition to the invasion of Ukraine. In exchange, 8 Russian prisoners were also freed, including an assassin who was serving life in Germany. 96 migrants are suing the UK government, claiming that they were badly treated at the Manston Processing Centre in Kent. Their lawyers claim the group were unlawfully detained between September and November 2022, with allegations also including a lack of access to hygiene products, forced removal of hijabs and reportedly inadequate conditions for children and pregnant women. So far, the Home Office hasn't filed a defence. And finally, it has been another successful day at the Paris Games for Team GB. 2 silvers, one from Ben Proud. He came second in the men's 50-metre freestyle, while Duncan Scott was runner-up in the men's 200 individual medley. And those 2 wins follow 3 golds, taking the GB total to now 27 medals and putting us in 5th on the medal table. Meanwhile, though, there has been news tonight that the BMX semi-finals, Kai White was taken to hospital after a crash. He had been a medal hope coming into the final stages of the competition. After that crash, reports now suggest he is OK, but has been taken, we understand, for further checks. Those are the latest GB News headlines for now. Plenty more from the newsroom from 10 o'clock in the morning. Now, though, it's time for Headliners.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thanks, Sam, and welcome to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, taking you through tomorrow's top stories for the next hour. And I'm joined tonight by a very balanced panel. We have the People's Gammon, Paul Cox. There he is, even more gammony since he caught the sun. He's representing the far-right thugs. And someone so far left, he's literally called Marx. It's Kerry Marx. There he is.
I'm the balance.
You're the balance, which means we're in real trouble.
Balance and the gammon.
The ballast.
How are you lads doing? Got any plans for the weekend?
Absolutely none.
What are you offering?
No, I'm just, just saying there's a lot going on in the country. Just wondered.
Oh, I see. Whether we're going to go and join in, just have more story.
Yeah, well, I don't recommend doing that. But anyway,
no, or anyone.
Good banter at the start, though. So let's crack on and have a look at the front pages. So the Daily Mail is going with stabbing suspect was a star for BBC Children in Need. The Times, extra police and prison cells to stop more riots. The Guardian, police brace for unrest from shameful far right, their words. The Mirror, I was in need, but Hugh groomed me. More on the very disturbing Hugh Edwards story. The Telegraph, Badenoch, we need a better plan for immigration. And finally, the Daily Star, learn to love a maggot. How very Daily Star. And those were your front pages. So what are the Mirror going with, Paul?
So, touched on this at the top there. I was in need, but Hugh groomed me. So the young man whose relationship with Hugh Edwards set in motion the stars fall from grace has spoken for the first time since his ordeal. Now, this young chap is now 21. He was a vulnerable teenager at the time when Hugh Edwards asked him, I don't have to put alleged in anymore because he's pleaded guilty to all these things. Hugh Edwards asked him for explicit photographs. He says he was groomed, and it sounds very much like he was. What's astonishing to me is this is now in the Mirror, and of course he had to go to the Sun originally. His family, his parents, because he was a young teenager at the time, actually first of all went to the BBC, were largely ignored or didn't feel like they got what they deserved, and we've since learnt they definitely didn't. Went to the Sun, broke the story. Everyone stood up for Hugh Edwards because he was such a good chap, and now we're 1 year later, and we've got this horrendous story where Hugh Edwards has pleaded guilty to having grade A disgusting photographs in his possession.
And the young man here is saying, because he feels worse now that he knows that, to even have met Hugh Edwards, and in the context of that, it's even more disturbing. Not that it's his fault, but he just feels awful about the whole thing. As you can imagine, it's very disturbing. And the stepfather even went down and filmed him, didn't he, and things like this. Anyway, go on, Kerry.
It's seedy, isn't it?
Very.
It's very seedy stuff. And there's a picture of Hugh Edwards on the front of the paper looking like a bouncer. It's odd. It's almost like this picture he had prepared for, if I get arrested for child porn, this is the one I want you to put up. I don't think it's the one I would have chosen, but basically the BBC haven't had any massive sex scandals for a short time, so Hugh thought he'd step in. And in the item from the young man, he says... he told the Mirror he feels the BBC newsreader took advantage of him, which I think is not giving us a whole lot of facts there, really. It's the kind of minimum I would expect that he would feel taken advantage of. I mean, it'd be weird if he didn't. He
was at a vulnerable point in his life, and he was even at a homeless shelter for a couple of days, and he was sending out social media messages to various famous people as a kind of cry for help, and only Hugh Edwards responded, which is already... perhaps a red flag, but, you know, he was vulnerable at the time. And then Edwards sends him £500 on PayPal, even though he didn't ask for money, and it kind of escalated from there.
Yeah, I mean, it's just horrendous, isn't it, that this even goes on. It's very difficult for me to grasp, actually, as well as it is for everyone else, I'm sure. But there's just more and more of this is going to come out, I'm sure.
Yeah, all right, let's move on then and do Saturday's Telegraph, Kerry. What are they going with?
Well, we're opening with the story of Badenoch saying we need a better plan for integration. I think she means in the country rather than her integration in the Tory party as leadership, but she might do. And she's now, like, favourite, isn't she, amongst the candidates for the Tory party? I think that's fair to say at the moment, isn't it? And there's some saying that she's going to alienate the party or divide the party up more. Other people who think she might collect votes from the working class, and really what they want to do is get a load of votes from Reform. But she's also faced a number of attempts to knock her reputation down recently. Treatment of civil servants who... I would have thought if they're called civil servants, they're the ones who are supposed to be civil. You can't expect it of other people. She's not the civil servant, is she? She never claimed it.
Great point.
So apparently she can be a bit...
She's the uncivil servant.
She's the uncivil servant, and she's accused of being bullying and a bit curt with people, which I think has surprised absolutely no one. It's more a reaction, yeah, probably, but that's also something that a lot of people like about her. And she's also saying that... that the Guardian have deliberately sent out messages, the journalists sent out messages asking civil servants to come forward with anonymous testimony. So they're looking for stories on Badenoch, really. They're looking to smash her down, I guess.
And this feels like the kind of Telegraph antidote to that. And on the integration part, which is the headline, she's talking about immigration. She says that it does need to be much lower. I can't put my finger in the air and give you a number, a figure, but it clearly needs to come down. And then on the ECHR, which is a big issue in this race, she's not being committal. She says it depends on the plan, and leaving the ECHR is not in and of itself the thing that will change immigration. Paul, anything on this?
Yeah, well, just on that point alone, she's absolutely right. You can't just jump out the ECHR and not have a plan, because it will be immediately open to criticism. A lot of people that don't understand the ECHR will immediately think it's some sort of Nazi move when it's not. Back to Badenoch, though, I mean, through the prism of identity politics... Kemi Badenoch is kryptonite to the current Labour Party. She'll become a black woman leader of the opposition, and because they've spent so much of their time focusing on those attributes, human attributes of people, it will make it very difficult for them. And I don't think that's been lost on these Guardian journalists and anyone else involved. Aside from that, she's also one of the few in the leadership race that are actually conservative. So if you look at the Tom Tugendhats and everyone else associated with him, they're very central. They're very, very central. Yes. It's all back to sort of this Keir Starmer, Tony Blair business. And I'm not sure, you know, they talk quite openly about lurches to the right. I don't buy into all that. Kemi Badenoch is not a lurch to the right. She's a stroll back to Tory politics.
All right, yeah. Well, I think her biggest rival is Robert Jemmick, and he is more on the right. But we'll go into him later. What about this other story about Starmer's best man, Paul? Yeah, it's quite interesting. Official at Centre of Olympics boxing gender row was Keir Starmer's best man. So this is Mark Adams, a spokesperson for the IOC, warned against the witch hunt towards Emaine
Chalif, who was the boxer yesterday. He's known him from school. Now, the accusation here is twofold, really. One is that politics is far too involved in sport, which arguably it is, and the second point is that it's evidenced by this relationship between Keir Starmer, who's obviously the Prime Minister of the UK, and the spokesperson of the IOC. I'm not sure it quite works that way, and I'm not sure you have that much influence over your mates.
No, I don't really. It seems really tenuous to me to even point it out, really. He used to be was a best man for someone. I mean, is it relevant at all? I suppose mildly, maybe a paragraph on it, but it doesn't suggest any kind of bias or anything, does it? Surely we judge the man on his views and what he's actually saying.
Yes.
And there's plenty to work with there as well. And he's the guy who said that this is not a transgender issue. It kind of is, isn't it? I mean, the boxing. I mean, I think we're coming to it in a bit, but it kind of is, really. It's not. She's not trans, but. This is all mixed in with the ideology and the discussion of what a woman is and who can punch who, I think, is quite relevant to it. So.
We don't have many times. We've got to do the Daily Star because this is so important, Kerry, this front page of the Daily Star, about maggots.
Yeah, it says we have to learn to love a maggot is the front page. Critters could save countless lives. And having not read the story, I really feel that it's probably true. It's probably what would we do without maggots.
I'm amazed you haven't gone really in-depth on this story, Kerry. There's a lot there. I'll give you the story.
I'm just going. Well, they make holes in cheese. There's a picture of it, so you don't actually end up eating as much cheese. It saves lives.
Perhaps that's what it is.
That's what it is. They could take
your apple.
The main part is medical boffinesses. So it's the Star going feminist because they've always been very boffin heavy, but they've gone with boffinesses, you see.
Yeah, right.
I don't know, they always talk about boffins. I don't know if you do this show that often, but...
I'm not sure that does make them feminist, though, because it's a bit like comedian.
Oh, you think that's even worse?
Yeah, I think
they've messed it up.
They've
tried.
I mean, I feel triggered.
They're overdoing it. Yeah, totally.
They've tried too hard and they've messed it up. OK, that's the Daily Star. That's all we've got time for in part one. But coming up, more protests planned this weekend. Robert Jenrick vows to cut immigration, plus Hugh Edwards' obscene pensions. See you soon.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Meghan Markle is threatening to support Kamala Harris, and I reckon that would be the kiss of death for her bid as a president.
Well, look, Meghan has a friendly relationship with Kamala Harris. I firmly believe that Meghan Markle will endorse Kamala Harris for president. This story is circulating because Newsweek actually took a poll asking how many people would be influenced by a potential endorsement from the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. 40% said they would be influenced. 21% said they would vote for someone Harry and Meghan has suggested. And then 20 said that they would not vote for who Harry and Meghan suggested. I think that Meghan wants to be involved. Meghan wants to be included. This is potentially a very historic election. We really saw Meghan involved, including with Kamala Harris, some voter campaigns in 2020. And I think this is a great way for Meghan Markle to get her foot in the door. Her father, Thomas Markle, has said that she's always had political aspirations. And what better way than to be somehow involved in inserting your name in the headline with a presidential campaign like this?
Do you get the vibes, you get the sense that she is a political animal?
I don't feel like she has tough enough skin, but I do believe that this is important to her. During that speech for the UN, she talked about writing First Lady Hillary Clinton. We saw her in 2020 work with Stacey Abrams, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, and Michelle Obama to do campaigns for women voting, getting women to the polls.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes and Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. I'm Nick Dixon, still here with the People's Cameron, Paul Cox, and the scourge of the people, Kerry Marks. Let's do the Independent. I'm predicting a weekend of far-right violence, apparently. But is that true, or just the Independent speak for normal people who are angry about the state of the country, Paul?
Well, a bit of both, but let's get into it. Nation braces for a weekend of far-right violence with 35 protests in wake of Southport stabbing. So far-right rioters have been told they will face the full force of the law as police brace for a weekend of violence with these 35 protests planned. Couple of points, really. This isn't just in the wake of the Southport incident. I think that's quite dismissive and disingenuous to say that it is. This is in the wake of the stabbing of the soldier. This is in the wake of the way the story was portrayed at Manchester Airport. This is in the wake of the two-tier policing in Leeds. One thing I would say, though, is that to brandish everybody with the far-right moniker, it obviously very much undermines what these people feel. The trouble we're having is, and I stood there for 5 minutes watching live footage of Sunderland just before we come on air, I'm not too sure what the rioters themselves are aiming to do at the moment, attacking the police, setting things alight. Now, I'll be the first to say that I understand the emotion behind it, the anger behind it, particularly with regards to Southport. Some things have got out of hand, some things have got out of hand and are being totally misrepresented. I really don't know. There's only one outcome of this. The narrative is already against the rioters, particularly in this instance. So if they continue to do what they do, the whole narrative will remain as it is. Nothing will change.
Yeah. Well, apparently you do get some actual far-right groups come in, is what they say. And then, of course, we want to be clear that you shouldn't spread online misinformation. You shouldn't set fire to things or attack police officers. I think that's all obvious. But at the same time, yeah, the anger, I mean, people are saying, well, why was the anger over this particular incident? But there was, like you say, it's a build-up of so many incidents. The final one is not necessarily always rational, as we saw with George Floyd. Yeah. Even whether you think that police brutality really is a thing against black people in America, so, you know, the more you look into the George Floyd thing, it's very complicated, and he had a lot of drugs in his system. But that was the thing that pushed it over the edge. We've seen a similar thing here. And Starmer, for me, could have done a lot more with his statement, but he did the usual thing. He just said, far right, we're going to crack down on you. He could have showed some balance and some acknowledgement of what people have been through for so long. But what do you think, Kate?
Well, first of all, I think that's a very good point. It's normally something tiny and almost irrelevant that can spark things. It's, you know, a tea being dropped off in Boston. It can be, you know, the George Floyd thing. He wasn't the ideal person to... He wasn't like some upstanding member of the community who then gets attacked by police and was a good example. But actually, I think that's what makes this interesting. It really shows that a subject or that a problem has reached a certain level, that something small tips the balance completely. We're told by Starmer that this is just... he kept insisting it's a few people and really these are bad actors, and they are. They're not... they're terrible at acting, most of these people. The way they throw a brick is awful. They don't even write good scripts, but... If you're going to say there's 35... I think 35 protests we're expecting this weekend, and I'm assuming that's simultaneous. So you can't say there's a tiny number of people. If you're going to say they're all bad and dangerous far-right people, then you're saying that's a lot, if you're going to say it's all. So what we're kind of ignoring here, and what they've been ignoring for a long time, is really respecting the law-abiding working class and other people who are more moderate and want to be listened to. And I think there's a danger in treating this immediately as this is going to be something that erupts, and therefore we have to do extra policing, we have to put a whole load of things in motion. And I feel like one thing's feeding the other, and we end up with this vicious circle of overexcitement.
It's a huge sigh for me there, because far right has become a little bit of a dog whistle for the working class, and the white working class, for instance. I really am loath to bring race into this, but it's exactly what is happening now. The tables are being turned, and it's just white working class people who as far as the media class are concerned, really don't know or understand any of the minutiae of the problem, and they're just reacting badly, and they're bad people. And it's not.
But there's also some inconsistency, I think. You know, on the left side, have we still got time? On the left side, it's seeing this type of rioting and demonstration as automatically dangerous and so on. You've got to remember that Starmer, and this is part of the inconsistency of it, during the BLM, and it was when BLM reached that level where there was like 25 deaths and £1 million in damage and $1 billion. And change that to $1 billion for no reason, when Starmer took the knee. So he is recognising that there is a moderate view, and that doesn't necessarily get represented by rioters. And yet here he's taking the opposite view, which I think is a bit, you know, and also, of course, there's been Islamist protests, which have also involved a great deal of vandalism and synagogues having to put on extra security. And now we're horrified. And it is wrong. It's absolutely wrong to be protesting or aiming this at a mosque or at a community. Yeah, it's absolutely wrong. But at the same time, there's a feeling, I think, in the air that this is inconsistent. And
yeah, absolutely. The two-tier system we've all heard so much about. Now, we've got to move on and do the Telegraph. And Hugh Edwards could retire with a massive pension. The BBC rewarding one of its finest representatives, Kerry.
We're really having all the fun stories today, aren't we?
I know.
Just, how joyful. I'm sure it's going to get more interesting in a moment. But so, yes, Hugh Edwards, free to retire. This is £300,000 a year pension. You know, after having been convicted for indecent images, he's soon the most indecent image on his computer. It might be his bank balance. And you know, I mean, on the one hand, he's not going to find another job now, so maybe he should have some right to some money. I don't know. But I think this is one of those stories where they talk about all the different lawyers and law experts who will basically say that there's no easy way of stopping this now. The law is on his side. And I think what we need to do is, if you don't like it, is change the law. And I think the public would vote for that. You know, I don't think you need a referendum. I think it'd be easy to word the law. If you just said there's a new law, it says that if you get done for having child sex images on your computer, you don't get your state pension or the pension through through the BBC. And I think the whole public would say, yeah, we'll kind of go with that.
The Tories should run on that. They could rescue the party if they just ran on that. What do you think, Paul? I mean, obviously, you know, these things were already in place, but it's just bound to sound incredibly disturbing that you get this. I mean, the guy had too much money anyway. We know this. He was just throwing it around on random people that messaged him. And now he's going to get $300,000 a year, or potentially.
That's because that's employment law. His contract to be watertight. It'll be part of the golden handshake. Even the BBC don't write employment contracts that mitigate against paedophilia. And so he is, in the eyes of employment law, totally entitled to that £300,000 a year BBC pension, which, of course, sticks in the throat because that pension is paid for by you and I, Nick. And, of course, Kerry.
No.
Never. So, you and I, Nick.
Yeah, OK, well, let's do the Express. And Keir Starmer hasn't quite got off to the start he wanted, what with the country descending into daily random violence and stuff, Paul. But what's this one about?
Keir Starmer dealt a huge poll blow, not that it matters this early on, I guess, poll blow after winter fuel payment fiasco and rioting chaos, if you haven't noticed. So Sir Keir Starmer's honeymoon period, unbelievable choice, I don't think it's ever been a honeymoon period for him, as Prime Minister, is over amid looming threats of riots and fury over scrapping the winter fuel payments. And it's been a hell of a month, to be fair. 4 weeks of utter carnage. And, you know, a lot of people, if you made the comparison, would say, well, look at Liz Truss. At least she only tanked the economy.
Yeah, not the entire country.
The entire
Nothing was on fire.
Yeah, I mean, his speech...
Not literally, at least.
Yeah, mainly peaceful fires, all of them are, as you well know, Nick. His speech yesterday, and I've tried to stand back and look at this objectively, subjectively, just sowed division straight down the middle of the country. He basically said, I am with this lot and I'm against this lot. Straight away. From here on in, there's no going back.
From the person who'd said it would be Prime Minister for the whole country. That was what was so disappointing to me. You've said that and then he failed to be. But this highlights the winter fuel payment, which is also not great because... And that actually is his core base, if you like, who are very alienated by that. What do you think, Kerry?
Absolutely. That's what I think.
Good.
No, look, first of all, your popularity is always going to go down a little bit when you get in.
That's a good point.
There's this, rush and excitement when someone becomes Prime Minister, and then suddenly the honeymoon's over, and also welcome to power. Why would anyone want to be a Prime Minister? What a horrible job and responsibility to take anyway. So, yeah, he's been a backseat driver. It's a really fun thing to be. And now he finds himself in the driving seat and realises he's on an ice road and he's slipping all over the place. And it's and what's interesting is it's coming at him from different directions. So, we've got the riots going on, the public disorder in Leeds, and then on the other side from his further left voters and so on is the two-child benefit, which... what he can actually do about that is kind of questionable anyway, and we were talking about this on the programme yesterday, so I won't say too much because I was already pretty funny about it, but the spending cuts, the big black hole, which needs fixing, so,
OK, and what already seeing his limits as a leader to me, because Blair or someone would have come out and I think they would have done a much better job at saying something that brought the country together, even if it was sort of fairly fake. He just completely failed to me, but I'd love to hear it, Paul, but we've got to move on and do The Guardian. And Robert Jenrick promises to cut immigration, but can we believe him, or is he like the boy who cried, stop the boats? Actually, I shouldn't call Rishi Sunak a boy. Kerry.
Well, so who have we got now? James Cleverly, Kemi Badenoch, Tommy Tugendhat. Do you say Tugendhat or Tugendhat?
Tugendhat.
Tugendhat.
I've learned that parrot fashion, I don't know.
You definitely don't say Tommy, though.
I say whatever I like, actually. Mel Stride and
Tommy Tugendhat.
So this is the former Home Office Minister, says he's open to capping immigration and wants to reimpose the Rwanda scheme, which is, I think there's at least two other candidates who are basically going to say the same thing there anyway. It's not going to make him stand out much. I think he needs to... first of all, say a bit more that makes him stand out, and secondly, tell us how he's going to approach that any differently to what was already in motion. Because otherwise, it looks like he's just re-vitalising it, and it doesn't make much sense.
The Rwanda scheme never made sense. Also, I was listening to an interview with Dominic Cummings today. He said the Rwanda thing was always Boris just coming up with a bit of nonsense because he didn't really want to tackle the hard work. This was his view, the hard work of actually tackling immigration, and he never thought the Rwanda thing was serious. Then it became Sunak's whole mission, and now he's talking about bringing it back. But I do believe Jenrick's quite serious. He's an intellectual. He's serious about tackling immigration. I don't know if Rwanda's the way to do it, but what do you think, Paul? By the way, I saw an Express piece that was such a puff piece about Jenrick. They're clearly backing him. We went to his event, he had ice creams, and he had so much great stuff to say, and he's David Cameron of the right. He's been called the right-wing David Cameron. Really? It's a bit weird because Cameron was in the Tories, but we know he was a lefty. The right-wing David Cameron, so they're backing him, and I think he is a big threat to Kemi. What do you think?
Well, first of all, I think reintroducing the Rwanda idea is not such a good idea, now that we've learned that Rwanda perhaps isn't quite as safe as we once thought it was. However, he definitely is probably the furthest right representative of the leadership campaign. Badenoch may argue.
Some people say still Badenoch because Jenrick came from being a Sunakite, but then he resigned, of course, over immigration. So it depends where you think he is.
This is what I think puts him on the back foot, because Badenoch has always supported Badenoch. She always backed herself. She's always felt like she was a leader right from the beginning, or the way she spoke. Robert Jenrick, unfortunately nicknamed generic quite often in the past, which I think is unfortunate. I don't think that's true of him, but I think that he has flailed around in those wins a little bit, backing Sunak in the past. I don't see this being a winner in a race here.
I think he's going to be the dark horse and come through. I'll have a bet with you after in the break.
50 pence.
That's it for part two. But coming up, China launches a degree in marriage. More controversy in the world of female boxing, and more Just Stop Oilers go to jail. Oh no, how sad. See you in a minute.
Good evening. Here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It is going to be relatively warm, not as hot as it has been, but warm and sunny at times through much of this weekend, though there will be some rain pushing through. Initially, we have a front making its way southeastwards through this evening and overnight. That's already brought quite a bit of rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it's now clearing these areas, and so here it is going to turn mostly dry overnight with some clear skies. For England and Wales, though, turning increasingly cloudy, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around. Where we have the cloud, temperatures aren't going to drop much. Another warm night to come, but quite a bit fresher across Scotland and Northern Ireland, dropping into single figures, particularly in more rural spots. But first thing tomorrow, across many parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a bit grey initially. There will be some outbreaks of rain around, and worth bearing in mind, some of the rain could be a little bit heavy at times. A bit brighter first thing across North Wales and much of northern England, though some cloud here and there. A brighter start for Scotland and Northern Ireland. Just a couple of showers starting to feed their way in from the west as we go through the morning. Eastern Scotland getting off to a lovely fine start to the day with plenty of sunshine here. Those showers, though, across western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland will become more widespread here as we go through the afternoon, and some heavy ones are quite likely. Meanwhile, across the southern southeastern parts of England, here we will have some bursts of rain through the day, and these could be heavy at times before they clear away later. Elsewhere, a good deal of dry, bright and sunny weather, and with temperatures, albeit not as high as they have been, getting into the mid-20s, it will feel warm in any sunshine. Sunday should get off to a fairly fine start, albeit a fresher start than of late for many of us, before some wetter weather starts to push its way in from the northwest, and this is likely to bring some heavy rain as we go into the beginning of next week. So do watch out for some high rainfall totals, particularly across northern and western parts. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michael Portillo. This is GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
I'm Arlene Foster on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's crack on with the Telegraph and more developments in the contentious debate over whether biological men should be able to punch women in the face for sport, Kerry. It's a hot topic.
Is that what we're going to talk about, is it?
Yeah, Kerry. Do you want that one, mate?
Oh, no, I found it here.
Oh, lovely work.
Oh, no, I haven't. That was the one we had from before.
This is Olympic finding stories, and Kerry didn't pass the test, unfortunately.
No, we've just jumped.
That one there.
I'm not an idiot, you know. It's just the programme is, and it can't keep up with me.
It's tough. Yeah, it's tough. You're ahead of us in many ways.
Okay, we know about the boxing, and the story is from the Telegraph. Imane Khalif's next opponent shares incendiary pictures portraying boxer as a beast. So the new opponent is Hungary's Anna Lucia Hamori. And she's being really confident about it. She's coming out saying, "I'll show if he's a woman or a guy, I'll take him out." Which, you know, good for her. That's the spirit.
Here we go. This is an official picture of the boxer there. For the radio listeners, it's a picture of a beast with a woman versus a beast.
Right.
Which we don't know what our view is on that. It's just a picture. It's not meant to be a literal representation. So, carry on, Kerry.
Well, the short story to catch people up is that Khalif was born intersex, or I believe born intersex from what we found out so far.
Has XY chromosomes.
Female, but, yeah, it could be... but yes, has XY chromosomes, which means that's male chromosomes and would have a male body, or at least male strength and so on. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was going to put out a Kate Perry parody with I punched a girl and I liked it. Punched her in a cherry chapstick.
You should have done that.
But I didn't do it, you know, because I thought it's pretty too controversial.
You did do it. You've just done it now on national TV. You've done a Trump. I was going to do it. I won't do it. I won't do it. I could, but I won't.
Yeah, I made what
Some said it was the greatest.
My bet is what's going to happen is that if she does beat Khalif, the people who are saying Khalif is a woman will switch to saying that he's a man and celebrate a woman punching a man. I think those same people will then be happy to say that's a man.
It's also boxing.
What women can do.
So, I mean, that's very tame. If you watch professional boxing, which Olympics isn't really, it's still amateur-level boxing. If you watch professional boxing, they really do slate each other before. The idea that a single image of this big, beastly man-looking thing versus her is this slight woman. Do you know what? OK, it might be a bit distasteful, but that's boxing. These people are just about to get punched in the head. So, I don't think it's unreasonable to have that. And, of course, this whole thing around intersex and XY chromosomes and, having as much testosterone as Kerry...
No one has.
No, it's unheard.
That's why you're not allowed in any of the Olympics.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, look, you could say it's unfair to the person. It's not their fault they have XY chromosomes, but it just simply means you can't fight women. You just have to be. It's just unfortunate for that person because it's just far too dangerous. Obviously,
there
we
have
saw
to be some rules,
Yeah.
and you know,
But boxing is dangerous.
the woman gave up after
Boxing is
46
dangerous,
seconds.
yeah.
The Italian woman, she was crying on the floor, and the fact that some people can still back that.
I think a lot of people
disturbing.
are more worried about the feelings of the boxer, of one boxer, rather than the danger of the other boxer, which is clearly...
Or the feelings in their nose when it gets broken. Let's do the Telegraph. An Olympics official has lost his accreditation for a white supremacist hand gesture. Now I understand what you were doing in the break, Paul.
Yes.
I didn't
Sorry,
realise.
I thought I was doing it surreptitiously.
What was the gesture? Can you show us?
Paul's going to do it now.
Absolutely not.
Screenshot this, everyone.
Olympic Games official has accreditation revoked for white supremacy hand gesture. A man wearing an Olympic Broadcasting Services outfit was spotted making the OK hand sign by TV camera. So this is where the finger and the thumb gesture... This is the finger and the thumb gesture for those on radio, I think you can imagine. It's also a popular emoji, by the way, and it's generally used as a sign for OK. However, its use as a far-right symbol apparently is on the rise. Now, one thing that is clear here is that it was unclear what the motives of this person were. And this actual sign is relatively news to me. I had to have a chat with Kerry. Kerry seems to know all about it.
I know a lot about racism.
It was unclear exactly how he knew everything. It was much he showed me anyway. But we don't know what the guy's motive was. So I think they're just being very, very cautious now. One thing I will say is I've gone to look at the video and the images of it, and he did make a point of getting in the view of the camera.
Yeah, so this is the picture. You can see him doing the sign. It's very, very subtle. I mean, this started off as an absurd online meme where it didn't mean anything at all, and then they started saying it was a white supremacist gesture, and it just wasn't. It was just people doing it. And they just because it always meant okay, and then that took over.
And it was always surreptitious. It was like wedding photos and stuff like this, and then it becomes.
And now apparently it actually is one. I mean, why is he doing it so subtly? That does suggest maybe it now is something. I just did it very quickly. I hope that didn't get...
The racists have taken the Union Jack and now they're taking the OK from us. That's really too much. And now even scuba divers don't know whether each other are OK or whether they've suddenly turned racist either.
Yeah. Right.
You can't make fun of someone with a monocle.
You're under the water.
You know,
If someone does a sign like, you're a white supremacist, then you swim away, you get eaten by a shark. It can happen.
This is
a great white shark as well.
God, the irony.
This, to me, is the absolute statement of where we're at right now, is that even OK isn't OK anymore.
Great point. Let's do the Times then. And the bizarre tale of a weird and sinister woman who actually cooks for her boyfriend, Kerry. What is wrong with her?
It does sound really evil. So she's a trad wife. Trad is short for traditional. I looked it up at some point in my life. This reminds me of when Gen Z discovered quiet walking a little while ago. You remember that? I think
just walking in general.
Yeah, walking without listening to music or being on your phone. They were like, it's called quiet walking. Like, we've been doing that forever. And now we're getting traditional wives so important. And there was a TikTok video of a woman complaining about feminism, going, what have we done? Working is horrible. We have to work. And so I thought feminism was about choice. I thought it was about you can work, or women have all these choices now, and now of course women are getting upset, or some feminists are getting upset with a woman who chooses to have a traditional wife life. So she's still working, I think, and. Interesting. I saw.
She enjoys cooking.
She enjoys cooking.
Yeah, it's completely.
And she cooked for her boyfriend.
But for balance,
how dare she?
Just for broadcast regulations, feminism was never about choice. It was about destroying the West. Paul.
That's the balance. Yeah, but the point I'm going to make is this:
You're so cynical. It's unbelievable.
Just banter.
I love the balance. Sort of.
It's not banter though, is it, Nick?
Well,
it's what you really
It's a
feel.
funny pattern around my real views. Go on, Paul.
So, a young woman likes cooking. Enjoys it as a passion.
Boo.
She's not allowed to feed it to her boyfriend, apparently. This makes her traditional. Yet, if a man does it on Saturday morning TV, like Saturday Kitchen or whatever, it's called a career. I don't see anything different.
And if she was cooking for her girlfriend, it would be called the new Channel 4 show.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Girls Cook for Girls.
Girls Cook for Girls.
Which is...
With a 4 in the middle, because it's the brand Girls Cook 4, and it's like on 4. Pretty good idea, actually. Should we move on and do the independent? And a Chinese university has announced a degree in marriage. Apparently, after 3 years of hard study, you're finally ready to deal with an actual woman, Paul. And I didn't know it was going to come off the back of my other dodgy comments. So, yeah. when I wrote that earlier, I thought, that'll be fine.
That will be fine.
Carry on.
A Chinese university announces marriage-related degree in effort to boost declining birth rate. So China's Civil Affairs University, which sounds totally rubbish, has announced a new marriage programme to promote and develop marriage-related culture. So, no, I mean, by the way, it says they will cover topics including family counselling, high-end wedding planning and the development of matchmaking products.
Sounds really romantic, doesn't it? It sounds like that's going to get the people together.
Can you just imagine? I mean, this is ridiculous. Also, as Nick was saying, it's very heteronormative. It is, isn't it? I mean, this is all about boys and girls getting together and making babies. I'm not sure that is what we're after in the future, but apparently China are going for it. None of this sounds to me like it's going to be an aphrodisiac.
No,
go on.
And it's a degree.
Yes,
so it's going to get a degree in it as well. And it's this is starting off with the new degree programme is going to start off with 70 students. So it's going to make a huge difference out of 1.5 billion people and get 70 people to get them a little bit more into marriage.
35 couples have got to do a lot of work.
Yeah. We've got to move on, but to be very fair, they are at least doing something about the birth rate, which we need to get on with in the West. Let's do the mail very quickly. And more Just Stop Oil protesters have been jailed. Finally, some good news to unify the country, Kerry.
Yes, this is a judge who's told Just Stop Oil protesters, and these were his words, it's easy to be blasé when it's not your life that's disrupted, and he jails them for the M25 blockade that brought 50,000 hours of delays. I don't know whether that's between everyone or whether that was lost.
No, that wasn't one guy.
All right. And it forced a man to miss his father's funeral, which, yes, this is the judge, Shane Collery. And so they've had, I think this is like roughly an averaged 2-year sentences each. It seems quite a lot to me compared to, considering we've had so many protests that have been shutting down London and so many other cities going on for 10 months now. I don't know, I kind of understand why something would be done about it, but at the same time it seems a little draconian. 2 years, what do you think?
Well, I'm not a judge. I mean, it's quite refreshing to see a judge called Shane. You know, I'm a working-class boy. Shane was normally like the name of the hardest boy in the year, not the judge.
No, it's the hardest judge in the year.
Yeah, exactly. Very based, this judge, as well. But it is good to see one-tier justice being dished out, because this isn't taking into account anything other than the crime that was committed. The crime's been proven. They don't worry that they're all called Cressida, you know, and the rest of their siblings are named after flowers. They just care about the crime that's been committed.
I love that, one-tier justice. That's what we're about on GB News. But that is it for part 3. But coming up in the final section, the academic who was actually a cat, an AI necklace designed to end loneliness, plus can chimpanzees speak? And if they can, how do we stop them taking over? See you in a minute.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm joined now by Stefan Kyriasis to give us the latest on everything theatre.
So, yeah, we're going in first with Starlight Express, which is back. It's not in the West End. It's out at Wembley at the Troubadour Theatre, which is a big, almost kind of warehouse space, which suits because, as you know, have you seen the show?
Starlight Express was my first ever musical. I must have been about 7 or 8 years old. I only saw it once, but I remember it being magical.
Well, this one, it's 1984 it started, and it's still running in Bochum in Germany in a huge arena. So basically what we've got, they've slightly tweaked it, and there's a little boy or little girl, depending on the cast, going to bed, obsessed with toy trains and dreaming of trains. Everybody is dressed up. To me, it looks like a cross between Tron and Priscilla, Queen of the Desert. I don't really think any of them look remotely like a train, but hey, the songs are Andrew Lloyd Webber. It's pop mixed with kind of cod 1950s rock and roll, some power ballads. The lyrics are politely like something out of an old speak and spell machine or something. You know, he's a steam train, they're out of date, he's being bullied by the diesel and the electric, and he falls for this carriage, the first-class carriage, New Girl Pearl, and he wants to impress us, who enters a race, and that's pretty much it. And when the races happen, all these barriers come up around where we're sitting, the lights are flashing, the music's thumping. It's utterly ridiculous, and I felt like a kind of teenager that was huffing sherbet dib-dabs off a giant block of sugar. It's so much fun, and the really crucial thing about it all is that somehow, in the middle of all of that, I felt myself getting into the story. And when Pearl and Rusty have their little duet, I was very moved. And there's this big starlight sequence, which is the inspiration, the magical starlight that he's seeking. It's beautiful.
GB News, the People's Channel.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is a nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
It's true. You're not wrong. No one will be cancelled. Lovely.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Headliners. Let's do the Times now with a story about an academic who turned out to be a cat, yet still made more sense than most current academics, Paul.
Well, that's true enough.
The woke ones.
Exactly. He was a rising star of academia with multiple papers. He was also a cat. Researcher creates fake profile for pet to expose flaws in Google Scholar website that allows scientists to fraudulently boost their credibility. So this was Larry Richardson. Online profile suggested that he was a young mathematician with significant potential, but there was just one issue. He was a cat. And apparently these places, they're called paper mills, so fraudsters were able to easily use easily available software to generate sham research papers. Now, I didn't realise you could just produce research papers in this way. So I'm now starting to understand these climate change scientists a lot better.
Apparently he was really good at explaining his PhD thesis until he presented him with a ball of yarn, and then he just lost focus. Kerry, what do you think?
I think academia is just becoming more and more of a laughing stock, isn't it, really? There was another one back in 1975, a theoretical physicist who wrote a paper, and he put we on it, and he used the word we in it, and he added his Siamese cat as a co-author. Which got cited, the cat got cited 107 times by other academics. And this is also reminiscent of, do you remember the grievance papers? The hoax papers? Peter Boghossian and James Lindsay and Helen Pluckrose, and they got a load of papers into peer-reviewed journals, which were, ones that cover critical race theory, queer theory and so on. And it included things like how to challenge homohysteria through penetrative sex toys and how to treat men like dogs in a park in order to get rid of some of their masculine ways and so on, which got published and peer-reviewed and so on. Loads of the papers did. So, the guy here at the end, he's complaining that they've shut him down. And instead of tackling the problem, they've taken targeted action against a cat. That's how pathetic it is, really.
All right, let's do the Mail. And a new AI necklace designed to combat loneliness. Presumably right up to the moment you realise you're talking to an AI necklace, Kerry.
Yeah, exactly. They're saying it's like having a childhood pocket Tamagotchi. They say we all had one of those. I didn't.
No, none of us. None of us.
They make a lot of assumptions.
Yeah, they assume we're born in the 90s.
Someone had them at school, the Tamagotchis.
So this is...
No?
No, not where I went to school.
We're slightly older than that, aren't we?
They were at my school. How old are you? Anyway, carry on.
Child. This is a necklace that you've got a necklace that listens to you talking, and then will interact with you through your phone.
There's a picture of it, which is just
Yeah, it looks like an alarm in case you're being attacked.
Yes, it's one of those emergency buttons, isn't it? Look, no one's going to think, oh, look at the sad girl there wearing the necklace she's having a chat with. I don't really see it. In some ways, I think it's no weirder than people who talk to flowers.
No, it's not. But flowers don't talk back. This necklace does.
Oh, you don't listen.
Yeah.
You haven't listened to flowers. How rude are you?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's basically AI schizophrenia, isn't it? This thing listens to you all day and talks back at you and has a conversation that it thinks you would like to have.
Yeah, I'm sure there's better uses for AI. Let's do The Independent. And chimpanzees may be capable of speech. Now, I've watched enough films to know that this ends with the chimps enslaving us in a brutal dictatorship, Paul.
It does, yes. A chimpanzee may actually be capable capable of speech, study of old footage suggests. So the study was published in the journal Scientific Reports, and it suggests that chimpanzees likely possess the basic brain building blocks to produce first words, similar to those spoken by human babies in the babbling stage. And in one study, this is some decades ago, a husband and wife duo coaxed the adopted chimp over several years to say simple words like mama and papa.
Wow.
I don't believe it.
Thanks for that. This has come from studies of old films like Tarzan and Jungle Book. And
they also think that it's actually dinosaurs in the Sinbad film.
and at the best, the chimps can say a couple of words. So you've got mama, papa and cup. Which is really useful if you want to call your dad a cup. You know, Papa, cup, and you go, oh, thanks.
Well, let's do the Daily Star then with a story about a screaming woman who lived 3,500 years ago. Was she upset about her lack of voting rights, Kerry?
That's almost certainly what's going on, yes. So this one they've known about since 1935, found in a tomb in ancient Thebes. So that was 1935. And do we have a picture? Is this going to come up?
Yeah, we've got a picture. Don't worry, Kerry, the pictures will come.
So, 1935, they've had that picture for 89 years. They've been looking at it and they now think maybe she died in pain.
I don't think she did. They went to the trouble of mummifying her, right?
Not for the listener, it's a sort of mummified woman screaming in pain. Is that fair?
Yeah, I think they did say here somewhere what they thought. They thought originally it might be just a result of
bad mummifying,
substandard embalming, which is often what I think when I see a woman screaming. I think, oh, you look like substandard.
They're now putting Kerry on screen next to the mummified one, which is you can sort of compare and contrast. All right, well...
But all the scientists who've been studying have since died screaming with the same face.
Well, do you want to do this or do the Manchester one?
Let's get on to the Manchester
OK, let's do the Mail. And Manchester's first alcohol-free bar has closed after just 8 months, presumably because it was an alcohol-free bar in Manchester, Paul.
Well, this is a great point, Nick. So Manchester's first ever alcohol-free bar, still charged £7.50 for the mocktails, closes just 8 months after opening, citing financial situation.
A.K.A. bad business idea.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it says Love From, which was the name of the restaurant, the bar, located in the campus neighbourhood in Manchester Centre, was described as a space for those who are off the booze, sober curious, or just looking for something outside the norm.
Sober curious.
Kerry, in like 1 second, have you got anything?
Yeah, I'll say alcohol-free is never as popular as free alcohol. Get it the right way around.
Great. The show's pretty much over. Thanks, guys. But let's have another quick look at Saturday's front pages. So, the Daily Mail has stabbing suspect was a star for BBC Children in Need. The Times, extra police and prison cells to stop more riots. The Guardian, police brace for unrest from shameful far right. Very Guardian. The Mirror, I was in need, but Hugh groomed me. We covered that one earlier. The Telegraph, Badenoch, we need a better plan for immigration. And finally, the Daily Star, learn to love a maggot, which none of us really knew what that was about. But that is it for tonight's show. Thanks to Paul and Kerry. Headliners is back tomorrow at 11 p.m, of course. If you're watching at 5 a.m, then as always, stay tuned for breakfast. But for now, it's good night or good morning, and God bless.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Here's your GB News weather from the Met Office. It is going to be relatively warm, not as hot as it has been, but warm and sunny at times through much of this weekend, though there will be some rain pushing through. Initially, we have a front making its way southeastwards through this evening and overnight. That's already brought quite a bit of rain across Scotland and Northern Ireland, but it's now clearing these areas, and so here it is going to turn mostly dry overnight with some clear skies. For England and Wales, though, turning increasingly cloudy, and there will be some outbreaks of rain around. Where we have the clouds, temperatures aren't going to drop much. Another warm night to come, but quite a bit fresher across Scotland and Northern Ireland, dropping into single figures, particularly in more rural spots. But first thing tomorrow, across many parts of England and Wales, it is going to be a bit grey initially. There will be some outbreaks of rain around, and worth bearing in mind, some of the rain could be a little bit heavy at times. A bit brighter first thing across North Wales and much of northern England, though some cloud here and there. A brighter start for Scotland and Northern Northern Ireland, just a couple of showers starting to feed their way in from the west as we go through the morning. Eastern Scotland getting off to a lovely fine start to the day with plenty of sunshine here. Those showers, though, across western parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland will become more widespread here as we go through the afternoon, and some heavy ones are quite likely. Meanwhile, across the southern southeastern parts of England, here we will have some bursts of rain through the day, and these could be heavy at times before they clear away later. Elsewhere, a good deal of dry, bright and sunny weather, and with temperatures, albeit not as high as they have been, getting into the mid-20s, it will feel warm in any sunshine. Sunday should get off to a fairly fine start, albeit a fresher start than of late for many of us, before some wetter weather starts to push its way in from the northwest, and this is likely to bring some heavy rain as we go into the beginning of next week, so do watch out for some high rainfall totals, particularly across northern and western parts. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
You really could become the next big Great British Giveaway winner, with your chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash to spend on anything you like. Listen to what some of our previous winners have to say about winning big with us.
On the day that I got the money in the bank account, everything just seemed a lot sunnier.
But I do have something to spend it on.
Just go for it. It's an absolute must.
Thank you, GBNews.
Amazing feeling to win.
For another chance to win £30,000 in tax-free cash, text cash to 63232. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message. You can enter online at gbnews.com/win. Entries cost £2, or post your name and number to GB07 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the arguments. We get rid of the disrespect, and then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain. Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates. You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. Tonight I shall be joined on the show by the former political editor to the Sun newspaper, that's Trevor Kavanagh. We've also got former Labour MP Stephen Pound, former Conservative MP Jerry Hayes, an American comedian called Lewis Schaefer, and former glamour model Nicola McLean. But first, let's go to the news.
A very good evening to you. You're with GB News. I'm Sam Francis. Back to Lee in just a few short moments. First, though, the headlines at just after 7 o'clock. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has announced a package of support for Southport following Monday's knife attack that killed 3 young girls. During his second visit this week, Sir Keir Starmer praised the town's resilience and announced a mental health support package to bolster local cohesion. He's also met with emergency services there and visited Alderhay Children's Hospital, where many of the victims of the attack were treated. The Prime Minister praised the hospital staff for their brave and professional response to the attack. Well, Southport has seen violent unrest due to false claims about the attacker's identity that was spread on social media, with concerns of further violence in the Liverpool City region over the weekend. Sir Keir Starmer's condemned hatred on the streets, calling now for a national response to the disorder. Robert Jenrick claims the Conservatives lost the general election in July because of a broken promise on immigration. The former immigration minister was speaking at the launch of his campaign to become leader and to succeed Rishi Sunak. Mr Jenrick also claimed the British political system has appeared either unwilling or unable, he says, to secure the UK's borders.
Broke our promise to the British public to deliver controlled and reduced migration and the secure border that the public rightly demand. We allowed the cycle of broken promises to continue. And as a minister, when I concluded that I couldn't secure any more changes to our legal migration system, I resigned from Cabinet last year.
A mural of former newsreader Hugh Edwards in his home village of Carmarthenshire has been removed today. The artwork has now been painted over, while institutions including Bangor and Cardiff universities are reviewing their ties with the ex-BBC presenter. That's after he admitted to accessing indecent images of children. The Culture Secretary, Lisa Nandy, is calling on the BBC to reclaim the £200,000 in salary that Mr Edwards received between his arrest in November and his resignation in April this year. Prisoners who've been released as part of an exchange between Russia and the West have spoken of their burden, that others are still in jail. It was the biggest exchange of prisoners since the Cold War and included dual Russian citizen Vladimir Karamurza. He was detained following opposition to the invasion of Ukraine. In exchange, 8 Russian prisoners were freed, including an assassin who was serving life in Germany. We've heard tonight that 96 migrants are suing the UK government, claiming that they were badly treated at the Manston Processing Centre in Kent. Their lawyers claim the group were unlawfully detained between September and November of 2022. Allegations also include lack of access to hygiene products, forced removal of hijabs and reportedly inadequate conditions for children and pregnant women. The Home Office hasn't yet filed a defence. And finally, some good news. It's from the Paris Games. Team GB have won another 3 gold medals on day 7 of the Paris Games. It takes the tally so far to 9. The wins came in the equestrian team jumping final, on the trampoline and in the water in the women's lightweight doubles sculls race. And there's further medal hopes tonight as well, with BMX rider Bethany Shriver and swimmers Ben Proud, Duncan Scott and Tom Dean among those pushing for a spot on the podium.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome to Lee Anderson's Real World. I'm the Reform UK Member of Parliament for Ashfield, and tonight joining me on the show for the second time is Trevor Kavanagh, the former political editor for The Sun, and he's back. Stephen Pound, 2 furious pensioners that just had their winter fuel payment robbed off them by Sir Keir Starmer. But Stephen, seriously, this week we've seen some rather nasty, for the past 2 weeks, should I say, some nasty incidents around the country, and the police have come in for some support and a lot of flack as well. What's happening with policing in our country?
The very easy thing to do is to talk about the hot weather and hooliganism. But I think what we have to do, and I think all of us in the establishment, actually look ourselves in the mirror and say, what is it about this country at the present time that has actually provided a tinderbox where one spark can set off this sort of response up and down the country? We can talk about policing, by all means. We can talk about the policing losing control of the streets, being a riot squad instead of a detective force. We can talk about that till the cows come home. But the real underlying issue here is, what is it about our country at the moment that has a vast millions of people completely disaffected who are prepared to come out on the streets at the drop of a hat and cause absolute, utter mayhem? We need to do some soul searching. You do in Parliament, if you don't mind me saying.
Well,
so.
Stephen says, what is it, Trevor? What is it?
Well, in 2 words, it's multiculturalism, which is badly managed and has been allowed to run out of control with mass immigration and the attempt to force many cultures to meld together in a melting pot, and that has been an abject failure. And we're going to be paying not just the price now, but for a long time in the future.
Multiculturalism, Stephen. It talks about a melting pot, does Trevor? I don't think there is a melting pot in this country because we're not coming together.
I disagree to a certain extent. Look, if you want to see how multiculturalism doesn't work, if you want to see where there really is blood on the streets, look at France, look at Paris, look at the banlieue, look at what happens there, where you have ghetto communities. We in this country actually have a pretty damn proud tradition, going back to the Huguenots, the Irish people coming over here in the 50s and the 60s. We have actually integrated. There is an issue with some of the communities who've moved in recently, who for various reasons, before we had the English language test for citizenship, actually did live in enclosed communities. I hope we've moved on from that. But this isn't, with due respect to Trevor, I don't think this is just about multiculturalism.
Well, I'm going to come back to Trevor because he talks about France, and it is horrific sometimes over there in Paris. We've seen the scenes there, but isn't that creeping into this country, Trevor?
Well, it's the same thing. Multiculturalism hasn't worked across the whole of Europe, and Stephen talks about the success, which is correct, of our melding of populations up until the 1950s and 60s. Yeah. But this all broke loose in the 1980s under Tony Blair's government when he opened the doors. And I think that even Tony Blair now admits that it was not properly handled. And I think when you're trying to put together very large numbers of people, I mean millions of people coming in over a short period of time, 20 years, and trying to make them assimilate without having the facilities in terms of
But we're not
schools.
trying, though, Trevor, are we? We're not trying. We just let people in and say, get on with it.
Well, exactly. This is where the failure lies. I mean, schools are the biggest victims of this, and also the place where, if there were to be a melding of populations, that's where it would begin. But teachers do not have the opportunity, and perhaps not even the will, to try to keep any sort of discipline in the classrooms. For instance, Catherine Burblesing, who runs an excellent school where mixed race and mixed culture pupils are working together because she insists on having parameters which the children themselves actually enjoy, and they like the success of the school. People of different religions are actually succeeding in that environment, and it's the only school in Britain probably that's doing that.
Stephen, I said at the beginning of the clip that our police come in for a lot of flack, and they've had a lot of support as well. But they're on the front line, and I always say that it's not the police officers on the front line who's taking the bricks and the bottles and the abuse and all this nastiness that goes off. It's the bosses, and it's those people over there in Parliament who are instructing the police how to police our streets. Is it time to get tougher?
Well, you make a good point, Lee. Every day you walk past the memorial to PC Keith Palmer.
I do.
Who was slaughtered in the carriageway into the House of Commons there by an extremist. A police officer who gave his life. You can see Yvonne Fletcher's memorial up the road. Again, the police officers have very often not just been the thin blue line, but they've actually been the dead line. They're the people who've actually given everything. Whether this comes from the top or not, I don't know. Yeah. All I can say is there has to be a different sort of Home Office direction for the police in 2 areas. One is we've got to actually start detecting crime. We've actually got to do something about shoplifting. But above all, we've got to concentrate. I think it was Lee Anderson who said, well, I'm a bit fed up with the police dancing around rainbow flags.
It was me, yeah.
Yeah, you do get quoted fairly frequently. I think there's a fair point about that, but that isn't the totality of it. We have laws in this country which are quite rightly brought in to protect the innocent, which maybe are not having...
Well, let's talk about laws in this country, shall we, Stephen? Well, we've seen another case in the news this week. Hugh Edwards, he was up in court this week. He's pleaded guilty for receiving some sexual images of children. You're the former political editor of The Sun. You had something to say about this when it first happened.
Yes, this happened. This first broke a year ago when The Sun ran the story about Hugh Edwards' relationship with a young person, where money was changing hands and photographs or images were being exchanged too. The parents of this youngster went to the BBC to complain, or at least to register the point, and they were ignored. So they came to The Sun, and The Sun, to its enormous credit, ran the story despite the huge uproar by outraged supporters of Hugh Edwards and the BBC, and to my amazement by our own former editor David Yelland, who I think probably will now be big enough to offer an apology. The simple fact is that newspapers are there to expose those who are doing wrong, especially those in high places, and especially people who are basically a sainted representative of the BBC, which has a terrible track record for dealing with these sort of complaints.
Oh, terrible track record, Stephen. I mean, look who's been lurking around in the corridors of the BBC over the past 30 or 40 years. Gary Glitter, we've got Jimmy Savile, we've got Stuart Hall, Rolf Harris. The list goes on.
There's a back history. Look, I'd come to this at a slightly different angle. I think quite clearly the BBC, on the one hand, was claiming to have a duty of care to one of its own staff. On the other hand, whether they had a duty of care to the children is another more important
duty
issue.
of care, all right, Steve. I think he got a 40 grand pay rise while they're having this duty of care for him.
When I think about this, these Category A pictures, this is the most revolting, disgusting stuff you could imagine. And in a week where we've seen what happens when we lose our young children, when we actually realise how priceless and precious childhood is, we should actually be working with Hugh Edwards and say, look, we want all the information, we want the trails, the audit trail, we want the names. Let some good come out of this. But let's not just concentrate on the BBC and Hugh Edwards. Let's think about the victims here. The victims of the young children who were coerced, bullied, beaten, who knows what, into producing this filth for perverts who frankly don't deserve the right to breathe this air.
No, I think there's strong words there, Trevor.
Well, he's absolutely right. And if it weren't for people like Hugh Edwards, the trade wouldn't flourish. And children are being tortured, and this is a form of slavery. It's a bestial act, and it is something that when a person of his stature is caught red-handed in possession of these sort of things, he should be made an example of, or at least pursued in the way that any other person in the country would be. And I think this is where the BBC fails. It allows its star performers to more or less get away with behaviour which is widely known, actually.
But why, Trevor?
This is very difficult to understand because, I mean, in the case of Rolf Harris and Jimmy Savile, the stories about both of them were circulating very widely, way beyond the actual environment of the BBC. People who had no knowledge of Jimmy Savile were certainly aware of his reputation, and yet the BBC put up with this for years. It is astonishing how fame in itself allows you basically to get away with almost murder.
Is that true, Stephen? Fame allows you to get away with practically anything.
I think we can talk about these cases individually. I mean, Jimmy Savile was invited to Chequers by Margaret Thatcher. She supported him. She backed him for his own. He was actually given a papal knighthood by the Holy Father. He was a man who was in a very, very unique and very strong position. Fame is a factor. Fame does actually surround you with a safety net sometimes. And there are people like that, you know, when John Peel, all the stuff came out after he had passed. And apparently people all knew about that at the time. What we need to do is, and I think, let's say fair play to papers like The Sun and organisations like yours today. We need to actually realise that sunlight is the best disinfectant. We've actually got to shine a light on these perverts and actually bring them out, not let them get away just because they happen to have a BBC press pass or they...
Well, Stephen talks about shining a light on perverts, but what about the people that actually defended these perverts, you know, back in the day? And more recently, I come in for a lot of flack when I criticise the BBC. I think of people like John Sopel, who defended Hugh Edwards to the max. Surely he feels a little bit embarrassed now.
Well, it is astonishing, actually. The BBC remains a revered institution for which we are all bound to pay a significant sum each year.
In a statement this week, a BBC spokesman said, "The BBC is shocked to hear the details which have emerged in court today. There can be no place for such abhorrent behaviour, and our thoughts are with all those affected." In November 2023, whilst Mr. Edwards was suspended, the BBC, as his employer at the time, was made aware in confidence that he had been arrested on suspicion of serious offences and released on bail while the police continued their investigation. At the time, no charges had been brought against Mr. Edwards, and the BBC had also been made aware of significant risks to his health. If at any point during the period Mr. Edwards was employed by the BBC, he had been charged, the BBC had determined it would act immediately to dismiss him. In the end, At the point of charge, he was no longer an employee of the BBC. We want to reiterate our shock at Mr. Edwards' actions, and our thoughts remain with all those affected.
Brilliant start to the show with our left in the corner, Stephen Pound, and then former political editor of The Sun, Trevor Kavanagh. But coming up next, we're going back in the day with comedian Lewis Schaefer.
If you want your news to be straight talking, this is the nightmare for the Conservatives again. Down to earth. It's not just Nottingham where this is happening, is it? And most importantly, honest. Hard-working, middle-class taxpayers, they'll get their book thrown at them. They catch me, Martin Daubney, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Patrick Christie's. Every weeknight from 9, I bring you 2 hours of unmissable, explosive debate and headline-grabbing interviews. What impact has that had?
We got death threats and the bomb threats on.
As time passes,
she could have saved Storm.
You made my argument for me.
My guest and I tackle the issues that really matter with a sharp take on every story.
Went everywhere.
Something practical could be done.
Or I can become something different. Patrick Christie's tonight from 9 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm going to take a second to tell you all about my show, Jubes & Co. We start off with the issues of the day. We then bring in both sides of the argument. We get rid of the disrespect. And then you throw me into the mix. And trust me, I'll tell it exactly how it is. And then, of course, the magic ingredient, you at home. We mix it all together, and what have we got? In my opinion, the best debate show in town. Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Nana Acquia. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Your lunchtime update on the stories that matter across the UK.
From breaking news and insightful analysis, inspiring stories and lively debates.
You're comparing yourself to a former Prime Minister.
Which is it? Stay informed, stay updated, stay entertained.
I just don't know how anyone would not want to be there.
Every weekday from midday.
We are Good Afternoon Britain, only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Neil Oliver, every Sunday night at 6 p.m. on GB News. And if an hour is not nearly enough for you, go to gbnews.com for special extended episodes online every Friday at 9 p.m, where we can truly get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Every Saturday, 10 till 12, we'll bring you all of the news that you need to know. We'll also remind you there is so much to smile about.
It's my favourite time of the week. I get to relax, enjoy some light-hearted stories, and let Ellie teach me about fashion too.
That's Saturday Morning Live, every Saturday, 10 till 12.
Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Lee Anderson's Real World, and joining me now is Lewis Schaefer, a comedian from New York originally, Brooklyn, you told me.
Well, I was born in Brooklyn, but I was raised on Long Island. I'm like a Jerry Seinfeld Jew, or a Joan Rivers Jew. It's a Jew who's left New York, left the center of New York, then moved to the suburbs, then go back into the thing.
Why come to the UK?
Why? Because I had run out of options, and I was hoping for another group of people who. And I was misinformed. I thought you would appreciate the subtle, sophisticated humor that I have, and you don't. You know, you're very funny, but you're not funny in the way that we Americans think you're funny.
Really? So how does the UK audience take to a comedian coming from the States?
Me, not that well, but other comedians they like. Yeah. No, it's English people. You think you're the funniest people in the world. You're not funny. You are funny. You're actually, I mean, this is the thing. This is what's happened to me. Is I think you're funny now. Yeah. I think the people you had on and
you've integrated.
I've integrated. Yeah. I used to think that the comedians were not funny, and now I think the audience is not.
So obviously, growing up in the States, you would have had comedy heroes. Who was that?
I like Don Rickles.
Oh, I love Rickles when he did the roasts.
Yes, even before the roast, I loved him before the roast. I loved Don Rickles. I loved white people screaming. which is why I like you, is great. I like screaming.
Screaming? Do I scream?
Well, you do. Of course you're screaming. You're screaming because you got a right to scream.
I'm looking at the some of the old 50s and 60s shows from the States. I used to love Sergeant Bilko. That was one of my favourites. The Honeymooners. Was that Jackie Gleason? I think it was one. He had some great comedians then. And of course Bobo, but he was British, weren't he, really?
Well, you know what the interesting thing is? You're naming people before my time even, and really? I'm old. Yeah, I'm a pensioner too. Yeah. I'm 10 years older than you are. I look amazing. But, okay. And so those are good people, really. I mean, I'm more like the more current generation. Like when I started comedy, there were people like Norm Macdonald and Jerry Seinfeld, those guys.
Oh yeah.
Not that
But what about British comedians?
You know what? Some of the funniest people are British comedians because they have to face British audiences.
So we are funny. We are funny.
You can be funny. Yeah. Of course you're funny, but you're not universally funny. I'm nothing personal. There's no great British comedians who are around the world.
Yes.
Maybe they might go to.
So what about something like you talked about Rickles earlier on? I think the closest thing we've got to that with the roast now is Ricky Gervais.
Yeah. And he's amazing. I didn't like him when I first got here. I've been here for 25 years. When I first got here, I just thought the guy was an idiot. Yeah. But now I really like him. I guess that's what British people do. They bring you down.
Again, you've integrated with us. You've accepted our values, our culture.
I have. It's like why I'm not going back to New York. I couldn't handle New York anymore. It's not a place where people can. I couldn't handle.
So that's interesting, Rich. What is the difference, from New York to living in London? What do you feel? What do you see?
Well, I think the whole world is becoming one world again. I mean, with mass immigration and all that stuff. Is there a difference? I think people put up with more here. And tolerant, I think. And I think because there's a lack of, like you're always talking about it, a lack of openness about everything. If you don't have openness, we don't know what's going on with any of these stories. You find out later that the guy's been on trial for like 5 years and you haven't heard of him because you're not allowed to talk about it. It's all this, you're not allowed to talk about stuff, which is maybe which is a key to my success, is that I talk about stuff. It's like, oh my God, the guy's actually said something. But
But actually, comedians, I mean, I do watch your show on GBNews.
Yeah, Headliners, 11 o'clock.
Headliners, yeah. When I'm struggling to sleep, I put it on and I nod off pretty quickly. Yeah. No, seriously, you and Leo are great. He's a good friend of mine.
We are.
Yeah, but comedians can get away with saying a lot more on TV in the guise of it being comedy.
Yes, because they have to remember that they're a comedian, and that's what I try to do. I remember that I write down before every show. I write down I'm a comedian because no one wants to hear my political beliefs about what's going on in England. They don't want to hear it, and even if half the audience or everybody was, they don't want to hear it. They just want to hear that they want to hear not something funny, but they want to keep it light.
Reading your notes earlier, it said that you gorge on raw meat and eggs. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I look amazing. And the people can be. I'm 67. So the people can judge. You can look at the skin, feel the skin, feel how soft and tense the skin.
It's soft. Yeah.
Delicious.
So
and that's what I eat. I eat raw.
It's like a low carb diet, isn't it?
It is a low carb. I've been doing this for about 6 years because I'm 7. I lost a bit of weight. I lost about 60 pounds.
Wow.
The old-fashioned way, which you can look because I never tried to lose. I tried, whatever. And so I've been eating meat, and then about 2 years ago I realized I should just be eating raw meat.
Why raw?
Because it's not destroyed by cooking. A lot of the nutrients are destroyed by cooking. You should cook certain food.
You can't eat raw chicken though, can you?
No, I don't eat. You shouldn't eat chicken at all because it's not. It's eating. I got a million rules. I'm not. At the end of the day, if you want to be healthy, raw meat and hopefully the good quality eggs, or even bad quality eggs, are better than a good quality broccoli. Yeah.
I always